She only wanted his leftovers. Standing outside a luxurious restaurant, clutching her 2-year-old daughter and running on nothing but hope, Emma asked a stranger if she could have the scraps from his plate. But when the sharply dressed man turned, looked into her eyes and dropped his fork, her world shifted. "Madison," he whispered. How could this stranger know a name she hadn't heard in 20 years? And why did the most powerful man in the city believe she was the sister he lost in a plane crash 2 decades ago? The summer heat pressed down on the city like a weight, and the sidewalk outside the restaurant shimmered under the midday sun. Emma Harper shifted her daughter, Lily, on her hip as she stood near the edge of the patio, hesitant, eyes scanning the half-empty plates and untouched bread baskets scattered across white tablecloths. Her stomach ached, not just from hunger, but from shame. She hadn't eaten since the night before, and Lily had only had crackers for breakfast. Emma looked down at the little girl in her arms. 2 years old, cheeks flushed from the heat, her curls damp and clinging to her forehead. She was too tired to fuss, just clung to her mother's faded shirt like she always did when they spent too long walking, searching for somewhere safe to rest. Emma didn't usually ask strangers for anything. She worked when she could, cleaned motels, sometimes did odd jobs at a mechanic's shop that didn't ask too many questions. But today, nothing had come through. She had $3 in her pocket and no one left to call. Not since the last foster family threw her out at 17. Not since Lily's father disappeared before her daughter was even born. So when she saw the man sitting alone at the far table, his silver cutlery still poised beside a half-eaten steak and roasted vegetables, something inside her pushed forward. Not desperation exactly, more like instinct. He wasn't looking at his food. He was staring off into the distance, detached, like someone who wasn't really there. Dressed too sharp for the setting, black tailored jacket, crisp white shirt, alone but not ordinary, powerful, intimidating. Still, Emma walked up, trying to hide the tremble in her voice. "Excuse me," she said softly. "Would it be okay if I took what's left? I mean, the food you're not going to eat?" The man blinked slowly and turned his gaze toward her. For a second, Emma wished she could vanish. His eyes were a deep gray blue, calm but piercing, like they could read through every layer she had built to protect herself. He didn't answer, just stared at her face, then at Lily. And something shifted in his expression. Not pity, not confusion, something heavier. Recognition. Emma felt her throat tighten. "Sorry, Forget I said anything," she muttered quickly, turning to walk away. "Wait," he said. She stopped. "What's your name?" he asked slowly, almost as if he was afraid of the answer. She hesitated. "Emma. Emma Harper. And this is Lily." He looked down at the child, still quietly watching from her mother's shoulder. His face paled a shade. "You don't remember your parents?" he asked gently, cautiously. Emma frowned. "Not really. I was in the system since I was 5. That's as far back as I can remember." "Why?" He didn't reply right away. He seemed to study her features again, like searching for something hidden in plain sight. Then he did something Emma didn't expect. He stood up, took off his jacket, and laid it over the back of the chair. "Sit," he said. "Let me order you both something fresh." Emma blinked in disbelief. "You don't have to." "I know," he interrupted, "but I want to." Still confused, she eased into the chair with Lily on her lap. The waiter appeared, clearly surprised, and took the man's signal for 2 new plates. Moments later, fresh food arrived. Pasta for the child, grilled chicken and salad for Emma. She stared at it, unsure whether to cry or dig in. "I'm sorry if I made you uncomfortable," she said finally. "I didn't mean to beg." "You didn't beg," he said. "You reminded me of someone I lost." Emma didn't ask who. He didn't explain. And for the next half hour, they ate mostly in silence. The air between them heavy with something unspoken, something neither of them understood yet. But that moment, as small as it was, would be the thread that unraveled a lifetime of secrets. And neither of them knew that their lives had just collided for a reason neither of them could yet imagine. Grayson didn't return to his office after the lunch. His driver waited patiently by the curb as he sat alone in the back seat of the sleek black sedan, his phone buzzing quietly beside him, ignored. The city blurred past the window, but his mind was far from the streets of downtown Los Angeles. It was stuck on a girl named Emma Harper, a name he hadn't heard before, yet couldn't stop repeating in his head. He wasn't a man given to superstition or emotional indulgence. His world was one of logic, structure, and control. He had built a billion-dollar software empire from scratch after losing his family at 15. His success was clean, calculated, a wall he built around grief he never truly faced. But something about Emma had cracked that wall. Her face, the shape of her eyes, the way her jaw tightened when she swallowed emotion. It all clawed at the memory of a little girl with pigtails and scraped knees. His sister, Madison. She would have been 25 now, the same age as Emma. And although the plane crash 2 decades ago was declared fatal for all passengers, one body, hers, had never been conclusively identified. The casket at her funeral had been empty. Grayson always told himself she had died, that it was easier to believe she was gone than to imagine the darker possibilities. But now, after seeing Emma, the illusion of closure cracked wide open. He arrived home hours later than usual. His penthouse apartment was bathed in warm twilight, the city glowing beyond the floor-to-ceiling windows. He walked straight to his private study and opened the drawer of a locked cabinet. Inside was a single photo in a silver frame, the last photo ever taken of his family. His parents, young and radiant, himself, 15, awkward but smiling, and Madison, 5 years old, clutching a white stuffed bunny to her chest, missing one ear. He stared at her face, then reached for his phone. Within 10 minutes, he was on a call with a private genetics lab in San Francisco. He gave them the order and made it clear: absolute confidentiality. He didn't have Emma's DNA yet, but he'd get it, somehow. A coffee cup, a strand of hair, anything. He just needed a comparison. The next morning, Grayson returned to the restaurant. Emma wasn't there, but he left his card with the manager, along with a note, for Miss Harper. No pressure, just conversation. That afternoon, she called him. Her voice was wary but polite. "You asked me a strange question yesterday," she said. "About my parents." "I know," Grayson replied, his tone even, "and I shouldn't have. It's not my place." There was a pause, then she asked, "Why did you ask?" He hesitated. "You reminded me of someone I lost. A long time ago." "Was she your daughter?" Grayson almost laughed, the first smile touching his lips in days. "No, my sister." Emma was quiet on the other end. Then, "You want to meet again?" "I do. No obligations. Just talk." She agreed. That evening, they met at a quieter cafe on the outskirts of the city. Emma wore the same beige coat, but her eyes were clearer, more guarded. Lily sat on her lap, sleepy and sucking on her thumb. They spoke over tea and warm bread. She told him a little more about her past. The adoption records were vague. She didn't even know where she was born. Her earliest memories were in a hospital. She'd always had the feeling that something about her story didn't add up. Grayson leaned forward gently. "Would you be okay with helping me confirm something?" She raised an eyebrow. "I'd like to do a DNA test, just to be sure. I'll pay for everything. You don't have to decide now. I can't shake the feeling that you're not a stranger to me." Emma didn't answer right away, but when Lily reached out to Grayson and grabbed his finger, giggling softly, something shifted in her. "All right," she said. "But if this is some kind of scam—" "It's not," he assured her. "And if I'm wrong, then I'll walk away. No questions, no pressure." Emma nodded slowly. "Okay, let's find out the truth." Neither of them knew what that truth would mean, not just for them, but for everything they thought they knew about who they were. The DNA test kit arrived 2 days later by courier, delivered discreetly to Emma's temporary apartment above a laundromat. Grayson had paid for 2 months of rent in advance without her asking. When she tried to refuse, he simply said, "It's not charity. It's peace of mind for both of us." Emma stared at the small white box for several minutes after closing the door behind the courier. Lily was playing quietly on the floor, stacking juice boxes like blocks. The child was calm and content, a rare moment of normal in their unstable life. But Emma couldn't relax. The test felt like a door she wasn't ready to open. She sat at the small table in the kitchenette and turned the kit over in her hands. Swab, seal, return. Simple. But it wasn't simple at all. If this man, Grayson, was right, then everything she believed about her life would unravel. Her name, her family, the blurry memories she had long buried. The idea both terrified and strangely comforted her. She had no real ties to anyone. Her foster history was a file full of transfers and broken households. The last family she stayed with had been kind but distant, and after she aged out of the system, no one checked in. No one called. No one cared. But Grayson had looked at her like someone seeing a ghost. And more than once, she had caught him watching Lily with an expression that was not pity, but familiarity, as if he saw something of himself in the child. Emma took the test that evening. She used one swab for herself, one for Lily, because part of her wanted to know if any blood connection ran to her daughter's veins as well. After sealing the samples, she dropped them in the prepaid envelope and mailed it off the next morning. Grayson didn't push her. He didn't call or text too often. When he did, it was just to check in. "You two doing okay?" "Yes, Lily's got a cough, but we're good." "Need anything?" "No, we're fine." But she wasn't fine. She was restless. She started waking up in the middle of the night with flashes of light, screaming, metal twisting. She didn't know if the memories were real or just the anxiety playing tricks on her. On the fourth night after sending the test, she dreamed of fire, a stuffed animal melting, a man's hand reaching for hers, and then waking to Lily crying beside her. She held her daughter close and didn't sleep again. On the sixth day, Grayson called. The results came in. Emma froze. Her hand trembled around the phone. "Can we meet?" he asked softly. They chose a neutral spot, a quiet public garden near Griffith Park. Emma arrived early. Lily was bundled in a soft hoodie, asleep in her stroller. Emma sat on a bench, hands clenched, watching leaves rustle overhead. Grayson arrived 10 minutes later. He looked more tired than usual, but calm. In his hand was a sealed envelope. He sat beside her and said nothing for a long moment. Then finally, "I had them run the samples twice, just to be sure." Emma looked at him. Her throat tightened. "And? You're my sister," he said, just like that. 3 words that shifted the axis of her entire world. I, I don't," she stammered. He gently handed her the paper. "Your birth name was Madison Rose Kane. You were 5 years old when the plane went down. They never found your body. They told me you died with our parents. But you didn't." Emma stared at the document, at the perfect scientific certainty of it. 99 or 97% match. She stood up suddenly, overwhelmed. "This doesn't make sense. My whole life. Why would no one tell me? Why didn't anyone look?" "I did," Grayson said. His voice broke just slightly. "For years, but the system buried you. Your name was changed. The records were sealed. I was 15. They wouldn't let me see anything. I only found this possibility when I saw your face that day." Emma sank back onto the bench, numb. "I don't know who I am anymore." Grayson looked at Lily, now stirring quietly in the stroller. "You're a mother. You're strong. And you're my sister. You don't have to figure it out alone." Tears filled Emma's eyes. She wasn't ready for what came next. But for the first time in years, she wasn't facing it alone. Emma didn't go home right after the park meeting. She walked for nearly an hour, pushing Lily's stroller along quiet sidewalks lined with blooming jacaranda trees, trying to make sense of what had just happened. Her name wasn't Emma Harper. It had never truly been. She was Madison Rose Kane. She was the sister of a billionaire tech CEO. She had a brother who had spent 2 decades believing she was dead. None of it felt real. Lily fussed as the sun dipped behind the buildings, and Emma finally made her way back to the small apartment. She heated up some leftover soup, fed Lily, bathed her in silence. Every motion felt robotic. Her mind was elsewhere, looping through fragments of memories that were suddenly taking on new meaning. Like puzzle pieces she had given up on fitting together. That night, after Lily had fallen asleep, Emma opened her laptop and searched Kane Family Plane Crash 2003. Dozens of results filled the screen. News articles, old photographs, headlines she'd never read before. Tragedy in the sky, tech family. Lost in Pacific crash. Private jet disappears off Hawaiian coast. Grayson Kane, sole survivor, speaks after family's funeral. She clicked through image after image, absorbing the pieces of a life that had once been hers. There was a photo of a 5-year-old girl wearing a yellow sundress, smiling wide with missing front teeth, her hair in pigtails, holding a white stuffed bunny. Emma's breath caught. It was her. That was her face. And that bunny, she'd seen it before, in dreams. She remembered clutching it when she felt scared, pressing its soft ear to her cheek. It hadn't been a dream. It had been real. She covered her mouth and let the sob break out of her chest. Not grief, recognition. A kind of emotional vertigo. The girl she'd always sensed was missing from her own past wasn't a stranger. She was herself. The next morning, Emma called Grayson. "Can I see the house?" she asked. There was a pause on the line. "Of course," he said. "I'll pick you up." She didn't dress up for the visit. She didn't have anything fancy to wear anyway. She put Lily in a soft pink dress and pulled her own hair into a loose braid. When Grayson arrived, he was already waiting by the car door, visibly nervous. He held the back door open, helped fold the stroller, didn't ask too many questions. The drive took 40 minutes, winding out of the city toward the hills. The estate appeared slowly, rising above the trees, modern but warm, with stone and wood and floor-to-ceiling windows. It wasn't just rich. It was personal, built for someone who wanted quiet. Emma stood in the driveway staring up at it. "I lived here?" He nodded. "Until you were 5. Then I sold the old house and rebuilt it. I didn't want to erase the past, but I needed something new." Inside, everything was clean, elegant, understated. But there were hints, family photos, a bookshelf with well-loved children's books, a framed drawing obviously done by a child. Grayson noticed her gaze and smiled sadly. "That was yours. You used to draw cats with wings." Emma laughed unexpectedly. "I don't even like cats." "You did back then. You said they were angels in disguise." They sat on the patio while Lily explored the flower garden with a plastic watering can Grayson had pulled from a storage bin. Emma sipped iced tea and let the silence stretch, finally feeling something close to peace. Grayson sat beside her, arms resting on his knees. "I don't want to rush anything. I know it's overwhelming, but you're not alone anymore, Maddie." She flinched slightly at the name. "Sorry," he added quickly. "Emma, I know you've lived as her. I don't want to take that from you." Emma looked at him carefully. "I'm not sure who I am yet." Grayson nodded. "Then we'll figure it out together." That night, when she left with Lily asleep in her arms, he handed her a small box before she got into the car. "What's this?" she asked. He hesitated. "Something that belonged to you." She opened it later, back at home. Inside was a worn, half-burned white stuffed bunny, missing one ear. Her throat closed instantly. She clutched it to her chest and cried, not because she was broken, but because something long lost had finally been returned. Not just the toy, her story, her truth, her name. Emma didn't sleep that night. She lay on the couch with the stuffed bunny beside her and Lily curled up against her chest, listening to the hum of the refrigerator and the soft sounds of the city outside. Her mind raced in 1,000 directions, looping through the past few days like scenes from someone else's life. Grayson had given her the truth, but with it came questions she wasn't prepared to answer. What did this mean for her? Was she supposed to move into his world now? Abandon the name she'd used for 20 years and become Madison again? Was she ready to be anyone other than Emma Harper? The next morning, she called out from her shift at the diner. Her manager didn't argue. She'd barely been able to focus at work since that first day in the restaurant. Instead, she packed up a small bag for Lily, dressed her in overalls and sneakers, and headed back to Grayson's house. He had told her she was welcome anytime. When she arrived, the front gate buzzed open without her even needing to ask. The security guard waved her through. She was starting to realize that Grayson had made arrangements, quiet, unobtrusive ones, to make her feel safe. He greeted her at the door in jeans and a soft black t-shirt, barefoot, holding a coffee mug. "Didn't expect you back so soon," he said, his expression open but searching. "I didn't know where else to go," she admitted. "You're always welcome here," he said gently. "Come in." They settled in the living room while Lily toddled around the giant couch, chasing a sunbeam that lit up the rug. Grayson sat opposite her and studied her face for a long moment. "Can I ask something?" he said quietly. Emma nodded. "Do you remember anything from before?" "Bits and pieces," she admitted. "I used to think they were dreams. A swing in a backyard, someone singing off-key in the kitchen, a smell, like cinnamon in old books. I never knew what to make of it." "That was Mom," Grayson said. "She burned cookies all the time. Dad used to read to us in the study, and we had a red swing in the backyard. Emma looked down at her hands. Why didn't they find me? They said the plane hit the ocean hard. Debris was scattered. A few passengers were never recovered. I thought you were one of them. For years I had nightmares about it. Then I stopped having them. I thought that meant I'd let go. But you didn't. No, he said. I never really did. There was a long silence. Then Emma asked the question that had been clawing at her for days. Do you want me to be her again? Grayson blinked. Her? Madison. He leaned forward, his voice low. I want you to be whoever you are now. I didn't find you to drag you backward. I just didn't want you to keep living in the dark. You deserve to know. Emma swallowed hard. I don't know how to be anyone else. You don't have to, he said. You're Emma. You're also Madison. You're a mother, a survivor. That's more than enough. Later that afternoon, Grayson showed her a room on the second floor. It had once been Madison's nursery. After the crash, he'd locked the door for years. But when he renovated the house, he left it untouched. She stepped inside and felt the air shift. Light pink walls, faded wallpaper with little stars. A rocking chair in the corner. The room had aged, but the ghosts of childhood still lingered. Emma walked to the bookshelf and ran her fingers over the spines. One was open slightly, the pages marked by age. She pulled it out. The Velveteen Rabbit. Grayson stood in the doorway. You made me read that to you every night. She sat down in the rocking chair, holding the book, and whispered, I used to dream about a rabbit with one ear. He smiled. You didn't just dream it. They didn't say anything else for a while. Lily had fallen asleep in the guest bedroom. The house was quiet except for the soft creak of the rocking chair. That evening, Grayson made dinner. Nothing fancy, just pasta and garlic bread. Emma helped set the table. They ate like any other family, laughing when Lily dropped her fork and demanded another. As the sun set over the hills, casting orange and gold through the windows, Emma felt something she hadn't felt in a long time. Belonging. It wasn't perfect, it wasn't complete, but it was real. And for the first time since she could remember, she didn't feel like a stranger in her own life. A week passed. Emma stayed close to Grayson's house, not moving in officially, but returning each day with Lily. She was still holding on to the apartment above the laundromat, as if it were some kind of anchor to the version of herself she had always known. But that place no longer felt like home. It was just a space where she'd survived. Grayson didn't push her. He never asked how long she would keep coming back. He simply made space. For her, for Lily, for questions that had no answers yet. On a quiet Thursday afternoon, Emma sat alone on the back porch while Lily napped inside. Grayson had gone into the city for a meeting. The air was warm, sweet with the scent of honeysuckle. Her fingers toyed with the edge of a notebook Grayson had given her. Blank pages, a leather cover, simple. Write down whatever you want, he had said. Thoughts, memories, even if they don't make sense yet. She had only written 3 words. Who was I? She stared at them now, the ink dry and solid on the page, and wondered whether she'd ever be able to answer. Then something caught her eye. At the far end of the yard, near the stone path that led to the old garden shed, there was a tall wooden gate. It had been slightly ajar since her first visit, but she'd never gone through it. Curious, Emma stood and walked toward it. As she stepped through, a smaller garden came into view. Less manicured, more wild. Tangled vines, overgrown lavender, and a small stone bench partly shaded under a willow tree. A faded plaque on the bench read, For Maddie, in case you ever come home. Emma's breath caught in her throat. She sank down onto the bench and traced the inscription with her fingers. Grayson had made this. He had waited, even when he'd stopped hoping. Her vision blurred with tears. She hadn't realized how deeply she'd needed this quiet proof that someone, somewhere, had still held space for her, even in her absence. Later that evening, as the sun began to set, Grayson returned. He found Emma sitting on the back steps with Lily asleep in her lap and the stuffed bunny tucked under her arm. I found your bench, she said softly as he approached. Grayson didn't sit. He just stood there, hands in his pockets, watching her carefully. I used to come to that spot every year on your birthday, he said, even when I didn't believe anymore. Emma nodded, swallowing emotion. You didn't stop believing. Not really. He smiled faintly. Maybe not. Maybe I just stopped letting myself feel what it meant to keep believing. A long silence stretched between them. Then Emma looked up. I want to know more, she said, about who I was, about mom and dad. I don't have anything from them. No memories, no voice, nothing. Can you tell me? Grayson finally sat beside her, leaning forward with his arms resting on his knees. Mom had this way of laughing too hard at dumb jokes. Dad was quiet, but he listened better than anyone I've ever known. You were wild. You used to pretend the whole backyard was a jungle, and you were queen of the animals. Emma smiled through the tears forming in her eyes. They loved you so much, Grayson continued. We all did. You were the heartbeat of the house. And when the crash happened, it felt like all of that just went dark. Emma looked down at Lily, who stirred slightly but stayed asleep. I don't know how to grieve people I don't remember, she whispered, but I want to try. Grayson reached out and gently squeezed her hand. You don't have to do it alone. That night, they brought down a box from the attic. Inside were old home videos, some on tapes, some digitized on a USB drive. Emma sat on the couch beside Grayson as he plugged one into the TV. Static, then laughter. A woman's voice singing badly, a man's gentle chuckle, a small girl in pigtails spinning in the kitchen, holding a white bunny yelling, "Dance with me!" Emma stared at the screen, hand over her mouth. That was her voice. That was her laugh. For the first time in her adult life, she saw herself loved. Not just in theory, not in stories, but in motion, in sound, in the way her mother looked at her like she was magic, in the way her father scooped her up like he would never let her fall. The past wasn't lost. It had just been waiting for her. And now, for the first time in 20 years, she was finally going home. The following days moved with a strange rhythm, gentle, surreal, and charged with emotion. Emma found herself floating between two identities, two timelines. There were moments she felt grounded, like when Lily laughed with her whole chest or when Grayson shared another memory of their childhood. But there were also moments when it all felt too heavy, too distant, like she was watching someone else's life unfold and trying to find her place inside it. Grayson was careful with her. He didn't demand closeness or decisions. He simply offered his presence, like an anchor. He had even set up a room in the house just for her and Lily, complete with new furniture and a small reading nook. No pressure, he'd said. It's just here if you need it. One afternoon, as Emma watched Lily nap beneath a sunbeam on a couch too soft to be real, she realized she didn't want to go back to the apartment over the laundromat. It wasn't just about comfort. It was about the feeling, like she belonged here, in this space, with this man who had once been her brother, and now stood as the closest thing to family she had ever truly known. She made the decision quietly. That night, she texted Grayson. Is it okay if we stay a while longer? His reply came instantly. As long as you want. This is your home too. And with that, something inside her softened. She began to unpack, not just her clothes, but herself, her history, her fear. She started writing more in the notebook, pages filled with fragmented memories, drawings Lily made, dreams she remembered from childhood. She asked Grayson about their parents, about birthdays, holidays, the little things. He shared photos she had never seen, stories about how she once refused to eat anything green, how she would sleep curled next to him during storms, and slowly a picture formed, not perfect, not complete, but real. One evening, Grayson invited Emma to a private charity gala. It was for the foundation he'd started in their parents' name, a scholarship for children who had aged out of the foster system, just like Emma once had. I don't think I belong at something like that, she said as they stood in the hallway. You're exactly who belongs, Grayson said gently. You've lived what those kids live. You're the story behind the mission. She hesitated, then nodded. He offered to hire a stylist, but she refused, wanting to feel like herself. So she wore a simple blue dress she had picked up on sale years ago. Clean, modest, beautiful in its honesty. Grayson met her in the living room and smiled, his eyes proud and quietly stunned. You look like her, he said. Emma stiffened. Mom? He shook his head. No, you look like you. At the event, Emma kept close to the edges at first, feeling like a stranger in a world of glittering gowns and whispered deals. But when Grayson introduced her as his sister, formally, publicly, the room shifted. There were gasps, confused expressions, and finally quiet applause. It wasn't about wealth or status. It was about the reunion, the miracle. Emma gave a short speech, something she had never done before. She spoke honestly, shakily, about losing her identity, growing up without roots, and the strange gift of finding family again when she thought she had none left. She ended with a sentence that silenced the room. You don't have to remember where you came from to be allowed to come home. Afterwards, strangers approached her with kind words. A few donors offered to help support single mothers like her. One woman from a national news outlet even asked for an interview, but Emma politely declined. It wasn't about headlines. It was about healing. Back at the house later that night, Emma stood outside beneath the stars. Grayson joined her, hands in his pockets. You were incredible tonight, he said. I was terrified, she admitted. Doesn't change the truth. She looked over at him. How did you turn out so good after all you lost? Grayson shrugged. I didn't. I just worked a lot. Built walls, lost people. Found ways to distract myself until there was nothing left to build on. And now? He looked at her, his voice quiet. Now I finally feel like something's being rebuilt. For the first time in a long time, Emma nodded, understanding in her bones. She wasn't just rediscovering her past. She was building a new future. For herself, for Lily, for a version of Madison that never had the chance to grow up. Until now. The morning sunlight poured through the wide windows of the house as Emma stirred awake. She was no longer sleeping on the fold-out couch in the guest room. Grayson had quietly moved her into a bedroom down the hall next to Lily's. It wasn't the nursery from long ago, but it was hers. The soft blue walls, the bookshelf lined with both childhood stories and grown-up memoirs. The quiet space that smelled faintly of lavender, it was home now. Lily's laughter echoed from the hallway. Emma rose, pulling on her sweater, and stepped out to find her daughter chasing a bubble machine Grayson had apparently set up before breakfast. He stood nearby, still in pajama pants and a black t-shirt, sipping coffee and watching them with a quiet smile. She woke up early, he said. I thought bubbles might buy you a few more minutes of sleep. Emma laughed. You're dangerously good at this uncle thing, he shrugged. I had time to learn, just never had anyone to try it on, until now. They sat together at the kitchen island later, eating warm bagels and fresh fruit. The air between them felt different now, not heavy, not uncertain, just still, like something that had been twisting for years had finally come to rest. As Emma reached for a second cup of coffee, her phone buzzed, a number she didn't recognize. She hesitated, then answered. Hello? Is this Emma Harper? A voice asked. It was a woman, calm and professional. Speaking. My name is Rachel Langston. I'm with the Department of Family and Social Services. We recently reviewed some flagged documentation regarding your childhood records. We believe there was a major clerical error in your case, one that may have contributed to your placement under a false identity after the crash in 2003. Emma's stomach clenched. I know. I've recently learned who I am, who I was. There was a pause. We've just finalized the investigation. I wanted to tell you personally that we've located several individuals who were involved in the early mishandling of your case. They've been dismissed, and there will be a formal apology issued to you and your family. Emma swallowed. I don't want their apology. I just wanted to know the truth. I understand, the woman replied gently, but I thought you should hear it. You were failed by the system, but we're trying to make it right. After she hung up, she sat still for a long moment. Grayson looked up from where he was cleaning up Lily's cereal mess. Bad news? He asked. No, she said quietly. The opposite. Just closure. He walked over and handed her a napkin, knowing better than to pry. Later that day, Emma drove back to her old apartment above the laundromat. Not because she missed it, but because she needed to close that door herself. She gathered what little she'd left behind. A couple of framed photos, an old winter coat, the worn-out stroller. She looked around the empty room one last time, then closed the door behind her. Back at Grayson's house, she found him in the backyard, building a small swing for Lily. The tools were scattered across the grass, and the wood smelled fresh and clean. You didn't have to do this, she said. I know, he replied, but I remembered how much you loved the old one. Figured Lily might too. Emma sat on the edge of the porch watching him work. I want to keep both names, as she said suddenly. Emma and Madison. One for the girl I became, and one for the girl I lost. Grayson paused, then nodded. That makes perfect sense. When the swing was finished, Lily ran to it, squealing with joy. Emma pushed her gently, the rhythm steady and slow, the sun beginning to dip beyond the hills. That evening, as they sat around the dinner table, Emma, Grayson, and Lily, something subtle but profound had changed. They weren't just people stitched together by coincidence and DNA. They were family. Later, after Lily had gone to bed, Emma stepped outside onto the balcony and stared up at the stars. She thought of her parents, two lives lost far too soon, and whispered a silent promise. She would live for all the years that had been taken. She would give Lily the love she once lost. She would keep the name, the strength, the roots. She wasn't just someone who had survived. She was someone who had returned. As the author of this story, I believe the ending is not just a resolution, it's a quiet triumph. It's not about sudden wealth or dramatic transformations, but about something deeper and far more meaningful: recovery of identity and belonging. Emma's journey is one of rediscovery, of self, family, and the truth that had been stolen from her. She doesn't need to become someone new to find peace. Instead, she learns to embrace both the girl she was and the woman she's become. And Grayson, who spent years locked in grief and guilt, finally gets back what he thought he lost forever: connection, family, purpose. The ending leaves us with hope, not flashy or fairy tale perfect, but grounded and real. It's a reminder that even the most broken paths can lead home, and sometimes miracles are quiet, patient, and found in the eyes of those who never stopped waiting.